Two DNA profiles, two unknown men, and neither of them is in the FBI's database of 19 million people. Stop and think about what that really means, because almost everyone following this unsolved case is arguing over a single suspect. The masked figure on Nancy Guthrie's porch, one man, one mask, one backpack. But the physical evidence has never pointed to just one man. It has always pointed to two. One DNA profile came from biological material found inside Nancy's house. The second came from a glove discovered 2 miles away. Two different men, two different locations, both linked to the same crime. Neither matches Nancy, her family, or anyone in the entire national criminal database. That is not a theory. It is hard physical evidence, and it completely shatters the single suspect narrative. A lone attacker makes this crime almost impossible to explain. But two men, one who knew everything and another capable of anything, make every bizarre detail of this case suddenly click into place. Tonight, I will show you exactly who the evidence keeps pointing back to. I am going to show you why this was never a one-man job. And I will show you what has changed in recent weeks that almost no one is talking about, including what a federal prosecutor specializing in no-body cases points out as the biggest mistake being made right now. Before mentioning any names, I want to be very clear, I am not accusing anyone of a crime. No one has been charged. The sheriff has ruled out the family. I will show you what is publicly documented sourcing every single claim and let you decide for yourself. Every source verified, unverified, or speculation is detailed in the description. This is Crime View. Stick around until the end because the final piece is what brings it all together. Let me start with why two people explain what a single person never could. The front doorbell camera at Nancy's house was shut off at 1:47 in the morning. Her pacemaker lost its signal at 2:28. That means someone was inside that house for 41 minutes. Now I want you to understand how long 41 minutes is for a crime like this. A professional burglar is in and out in 5 minutes. 10 minutes is sloppy. 20 minutes is downright reckless. 41 minutes inside someone else's house in the dark in the middle of the night is either the most incompetent burglary in history or something else entirely. We are talking about people who felt comfortable, who knew the layout, and who were in no rush because they had no fear of getting caught. And think about everything that happened during those 41 minutes. They had to find Nancy. They had to control her. The sheriff described her as sharp, clever, and highly aware of her surroundings. So they had to overpower her, move her from her bedroom through the house, out the door and into a vehicle, all in total darkness. A single person doing all of that would have been under immense pressure. Every passing second doubles the danger. But two people can divide the work. One handles Nancy, another watches the street. One guides her down the hallway, another waits by the getaway car. The timeline that makes 41 minutes suicide for a single attacker becomes calm and methodical for two. Former FBI negotiator Chip Massey stated that controlling an elderly hostage while managing the logistics of a kidnapping requires massive coordination, something a lone attacker simply couldn't pull off. And the sheriff himself has never ruled out an accomplice. Then there is the crime scene. Fox News drone footage showed that the floodlights at the back of Nancy's property were smashed. The doorbell camera only faced the front. If one person disabled the front camera while a second accomplice sabotaged the backlights, we are looking at a coordinated two-point entry planned well in advance. Two people who coordinated their positions and timing long before they ever arrived. And then there is the surveillance campaign, which is the part that truly chills me. Because this home was watched and staked out for weeks before Nancy was taken, the sheriff singled out January 11th, requesting neighborhood security footage for that specific date without ever explaining why. Then there is January 23rd. Someone was caught on camera walking backward past a house about 6.5 miles from Nancy's, testing how Ring cameras react when approached in reverse. I need you to understand why walking backward is so crucial because it is one of the most revealing details of this entire investigation. Consumer-grade security cameras, like Ring, use passive infrared sensors. They stay asleep until body heat wakes them up. The sensor triggers the processor. The lens focuses. The Wi-Fi establishes a connection. That split-second handshake takes 1 to 2 seconds. Walk forward, and those crucial seconds capture your approaching face. Move backward, and the lens only records the dark back of a hood. By the time the lens actually starts recording, your face is already hidden. The person on January 23rd physically beat the camera lag with their own body. That is not the work of an opportunist. We are talking about someone who studied the technology. When a dog barked, they fled but kept facing backward the entire time. They fought the basic human reflex to look toward the sound. They preferred to stumble rather than show that camera a single frame of their face. That level of discipline is not instinct. It comes from planning. 9 days later, on February 1st, the exact same suspect, or someone wearing the same distinctive Ozark Trail backpack with reflective strips, walked straight up to Nancy's porch. But he was no longer walking backward. He was calm, confident. He tapped the camera lens twice, like someone checking a familiar daily route. What changed in those 9 days? The answer is simple. January 23rd was a test run. When police did not show up the next morning, he realized he was invisible. By February 1st, he was no longer testing. He was executing. And there is more. 4 networks, A, B, C, CBS, NBC, and CNN independently confirmed, through law enforcement sources, that the suspect visited the house multiple times before the night they abducted Nancy. The sheriff's department dismissed that report as nothing but pure speculation. But 4 networks, 4 different sources said the exact same thing. Now let's calculate the risk of exposure. If just one person made all of those appearances, January 11th, the 23rd, a prior visit, and February 1st, we are talking about an individual exposed in the area 4 separate times in 3 weeks. 4 chances to get caught on camera. 4 opportunities for a neighbor to notice. But if 2 people were taking turns, no one would appear more than twice. The risk is divided. The exposure is instantly cut in half. And the lessons learned at one house dodging a Ring camera by walking backward were successfully applied at another. That is the kind of intelligence shared between 2 accomplices. So here is the scheme. One person provides the intel. The physical layout, the camera placements, active recording times, the gate, the exact schedule for her medication. The pacemaker, the neighborhood, the timing, everything a stranger would need weeks of surveillance to learn. But an insider already knows. That person is the mastermind behind the plan. They never need to step foot on scene. Their value lies in their knowledge. They stay home building an alibi based entirely on not being anywhere near the scene. The second brings the physical capability and willingness to break into a home at 1:47. In the morning, confront an elderly woman and abduct her. The criminal expertise to act under high pressure without leaving useful evidence. A physique matching the FBI description. This person is the muscle. They execute a master plan handed down days or weeks in advance. They walk through the door armed with intelligence they could never have acquired on their own. But this is where we move beyond mere numbers and start talking about names. Because one of the suspects matches that official FBI profile with a level of precision that is hard to call a coincidence. I want to introduce a name that during the opening weeks of this case, almost nobody dared to whisper out loud. 48-year-old Dominic Aaron Lee Evans, an elementary school teacher working in the Tucson area. And for 19 years, the drummer in a local band alongside a bassist named Tommaso Cioni. 19 years. That specific detail is crucial, and we will return to it very soon. But first observe how Evans fits the description the FBI released regarding the man on the porch. The Bureau described the suspect as a male 5'9" to 5'10", medium build, dark clothing, a ski mask and nitrile gloves. An Ozark Trail backpack and visible facial hair, a mustache or goatee detectable under the mask. Former FBI profiler Jim Clemente also spotted what he believed was a tattoo or mark on the suspect's right wrist. Now look at Dominic Evans, roughly 5'9" medium build, photographed in public wearing a mustache and goatee that match that description. And in videos of his band performances online, sleuths identified a distinct mark on his right wrist, which lines up perfectly with what Clemente pointed out. Height, build, facial hair, the mark on the wrist. Every single point in the FBI description matches this man. And then there is his record. Evans has a serious history in the Pima Court database. Burglary, robbery, theft, embezzlement. Now think about what those words actually mean. Burglary means breaking into a property unlawfully with the intent to commit a crime. Robbery means taking something by force or intimidation. Entry, confrontation, snatching. That is exactly the profile required by the events at Nancy Guthrie's home on February 1st. Here is the alarming part. No DNA profile in this case matched CODIS, the national database with 19 million offender profiles. To an outsider, the lack of a match just means they have never been arrested for a felony. But for someone with prior convictions, not being in that database absolutely demands an explanation. Arizona's DNA collection laws have changed quite a bit over the years. If Evans's convictions came before mandatory collection was required for his crimes, or if his cases were settled through plea deals that never required a DNA sample, he could have multiple offenses in the court system and still remain invisible to CODIS. A criminal history with no DNA on file. That combination is the forensic equivalent of a ghost. Evans told the New York Times that he only saw Nancy once at an Easter event in 2011. He said he learned of the disappearance on Instagram and messaged Tommaso to support him. He added that he spoke with investigators for 40 minutes and has not heard from them since. And then there is the band. Evans and Tommaso did not just know each other casually. They met through classified ads nearly 2 decades ago. Evans found the guitarist on Craigslist. Tommaso answered an ad in the Tucson Weekly. They recorded their debut album together in late 2009. And the name they chose for that album was Life, Love, Love, Murder. 4 words deliberately chosen by 3 men to represent their artistic vision. 2 of them mean love. One of them is murder. An album title is not evidence. I want to make that very clear. But titles are windows into the minds of those who choose them. And a band naming their record with the word murder, whose 2 longtime members are now at the center of a case like this, is at least a detail worth knowing. Now think about the timing of Evans reaching out. A national kidnapping case breaks out. Your bandmate's mother-in-law is the victim, and your first reaction is to message the man at the center of it all directly. That is either a friend reaching out to support during a crisis, or the first step in a quiet, calculated follow-up. A status report disguised as sympathy. I'm not telling you which one. I guarantee you investigators will analyze the timing frequency and whether their pattern of contact changed as February 1st approached. But here is the question Evans cannot answer alone. To know which house to target, which camera to avoid, which door to cross, and which night Nancy would be alone, someone had to tell him. Someone who knew everything. And that someone has been only 4 miles away this entire time. The person who planned this crime needed an incredibly specific type of knowledge. Not the kind you get from just driving past a house, but the kind gained from being inside for years. Tommaso Cioni is 50 years old and was born in Tuscany, Italy. He has been married to Nancy Guthrie, Nancy's oldest daughter, since 2006. 20 years of marriage, 20 years of Friday dinners. 20 years of walking through Nancy's door, past her cameras, through her gate, down her hallway. He teaches advanced placement biology at a charter school. He plays bass in the same band as Dominic Evans. And he is the last person to see Nancy Guthrie alive. On the night of January 31st, Tommaso took Nancy home after they had dinner together. The sheriff confirmed to the New York Times that he walked her to the door at approximately 9:50 in the evening, verifying she was safe inside. Then he drove home, 4 miles about 10 minutes down quiet, lonely desert roads. 3 hours and 57 minutes later, the camera stopped broadcasting. No confirmed alibi has ever been made public for Tommaso during that time frame, nor for Annie. They both live in the same house. Whatever one says, the other confirms. Now look at the man on the porch through that lens. Body language analysts who reviewed the FBI video used a specific term for his movement ownership behavior. The suspect does not search for the camera. He walks straight toward it, showing zero hesitation at the door. He knows exactly where the flower pot used to block the security camera is. He walks up and taps it twice. It is a casual rhythmic gesture, like a man checking a piece of furniture he passes by every single day. A stranger does not move like that. That is muscle memory. 20 years of Friday dinners imprinted on his body. And think of everything the planner had to know. He had to know those cameras were just for show. Nancy's Nest system did not have an active cloud subscription. The cameras only sent motion alerts. But they did not record continuously, so the FBI had to partner with Google to recover residual data from their servers. Who knows something like that? Only those close to her who spent time there and helped Nancy with technology. People who saw that camera every week and knew she never paid for the subscription recording service. He had to know the gate. Nancy's house is protected by a heavy wrought iron security gate. In the FBI footage, the suspect slips through without forcing anything. No tool marks, no crowbars. Either Nancy left it open, which is possible for a woman who felt safe in her home of 40 years, or someone made sure to leave it unlocked. Someone who stood at that same gate 4 hours earlier saying goodbye. And then there is the detail that disturbs me most, the medication. Nancy's life-saving medications were left sitting right on the kitchen counter. The sheriff confirmed these drugs kept potentially fatal conditions at bay. The intruders spent 41 minutes inside that house, and yet nobody took them. If this was a kidnapping for ransom, those pills were critical. A dead hostage is worth nothing. Leaving them behind can only mean two things. Either the kidnappers were so incompetent they did not know an 84-year-old woman with a pacemaker needs her medication, or they knew she would never use them. Because keeping her alive was never the plan. Let us look at the timing, because it points in a very specific direction. They took Nancy the exact weekend Savannah Guthrie was away covering the Olympics for NBC. That kind of Olympic coverage is planned months in advance. So, if you wanted to abduct Nancy while her most influential, well-connected relative was on the other side of the planet, who would know that schedule? Not a stranger, but someone in the family who heard about the trip over dinner. Then there is his profession. Tommaso teaches advanced biology. We are talking college-level genetics, molecular biology, and biochemistry. His students learn all about PCR amplification, the exact technique that forensic labs use to process DNA evidence. They study gel electrophoresis, the method used for creating codice genetic profiles. The porch suspect wore black nitrile gloves, the very same nitrile gloves found in almost any biology classroom across the country. A biology teacher wears those gloves every single workday. He knows exactly how DNA transfers between surfaces. He knows what forensic technicians look for, and he knows exactly what they tend to overlook. But here is what few people know about nitrile gloves. They are not perfect. They resist chemicals but cannot hide forensic evidence. Microtears easily form from physical exertion, especially around the fingers. Within minutes, sweat begins to pool inside. If you wore nitrile gloves while subduing and carrying an 84-year-old woman, your sweat would eventually seep through. A biology teacher would know that meaning. He would also know to dump those gloves far away from the house, in a place where nobody would look until it was too late. Still, they found 3 kilometers from Nancy's house with DNA from an unknown man. It is not in CODIS, no matches. Tommaso Cioni has no criminal record. His DNA is not in CODIS. If that glove were his, the result would look exactly like this. I want to be extremely careful and fair here, because this is the line where speculation must be called what it is. None of this is concrete proof. A biologist wearing nitrile gloves is not a crime, and millions of people own that exact backpack. What I am showing you is a pattern investigators are currently analyzing according to reports. It is not a verdict. Now look at the gear the suspect was carrying and ask yourself the question almost no one is asking. Why was it so bad a $20 Ozark Trail backpack from Walmart with reflective stripes that glow under infrared? A cheap ski mask and a belly band holster worn over a thick jacket in the worst possible position. Firearms expert John Correa said that no one with even a single day of tactical training would use a holster like that. The total cost of the suspect's entire outfit was barely $70. Tommaso's defenders absolutely loved this detail. They say he is far too smart to look that ridiculous. A biology teacher would never plan a crime wearing clearance clothes. But let's flip that argument. If you're smart and planning a crime to leave no trace, the only thing you must control is your profile. That behavioral template the FBI designs to describe exactly who they are searching for. If you show up with professional gear, night vision, a silencer, and a signal jammer, analysts will describe someone trained. That search window shrinks incredibly fast, pointing straight at suspects like a science teacher. But if you intentionally grab the worst gear possible, the cheapest backpack, the wrong holster, and even the reflective tape you should have cut off, you're building a entirely different persona. They'll describe an unorganized, impulsive, and completely untrained attacker, someone who's never planned a thing, throwing suspicion 4 miles away from a methodical educator. That's not stupidity. It could be a simple disguise. And 124 days later, no one in law enforcement has named Tommaso Cioni a suspect. If it's a disguise, it's working. There's more, and I'm going to lay it out just like the investigators did themselves. In May of last year, 8 months before the abduction, Tommaso signed a power of attorney giving Annie control over his money and property. Legal experts say this is standard in real estate deals. Maybe so, but that piece of paper still exists. The timing is right there, and so is the kidnapping. Former journalist Ashley Banfield reported that a police source revealed Tommaso could actually be the prime suspect. The sheriff later publicly cleared the family, but federal agents returned to Annie and Tommaso's home more than 5 times. They carried out items in brown paper bags, the kind used to preserve biological evidence. Annie's car was towed. They searched their septic tank and seized the property's security cameras. I'll leave you with one very simple question. Is this really how police treat people they have actually cleared? And then there's the silence. For weeks after Nancy disappeared, every member of the Guthrie family faced the cameras. Savannah posted emotional videos, offered a $1 million reward, and described her constant agony. Cameron spoke directly to the captor. Annie cooperated. Every single family member cried out for help except one. Tommaso Cioni didn't release any statement. He never appeared in videos, didn't talk to the press, and never stood beside his wife as she pleaded to find her mother. Reporter Brian Entin told Megyn Kelly that Tommaso, a man with a highly distinctive beard, hadn't been seen in almost a week. But let's be fair, because there's an innocent explanation for this. Someone targeted online might stay quiet on their lawyer's advice, knowing every word could be used against them. That's real, and it happens to innocent people. But it's also true that silence is a choice, and it contrasts sharply with a family that wouldn't stop talking. He finally appeared in public on March 2nd, a month after the abduction, walking arm in arm with Annie and Savannah to Nancy's memorial. No statements, no pleas, just a walk in front of the cameras. You can draw your own conclusions about what changed after weeks of staying out of sight to reappear so calculated in the first month of the disappearance. For a long time, there was one argument that supposedly cleared him completely: his height. The FBI said the suspect was between 5'9" and 5'10". Online, many insisted that Tommaso was 6 feet tall, far too tall to be him. But his actual height has never been confirmed. And on March 2nd, walking next to Savannah Guthrie, reportedly 5'10", something became clear that photo comparisons had already been suggesting. In that footage, Tommaso doesn't look much taller. He's standing right beside her, almost at her exact height. Some estimate he's half an inch shorter than Savannah, putting him at 5'9.5", right in the FBI's range. So, the single detail that supposedly ruled him out might not rule him out at all. And that opens the door to something huge. It means maybe the man who planned this was the same one on the porch. Perhaps there was no second accomplice at all. Or maybe both were there, one inside the other, in the vehicle. 2 DNA profiles, multiple explanations. None of this is solved. And that brings us to the car, a detail that could finally crack the entire case. A couple living about 2.5 miles from Nancy's house on a quiet residential road called Camino Real had a Ring camera. That street bypasses the major intersections between Nancy's neighborhood and the exit routes out of the area. Exactly the route someone fleeing a crime scene at 2:30 in the morning would choose by sheer instinct. Their camera captured 12 cars between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st. One drove by at 2:36 in the morning. Her pacemaker stopped sending signals at 2:28. NBC correspondent Liz Kreutz drove from Nancy's house to that camera. It took 6 minutes, 2:28. Plus 6 minutes puts the vehicle right there at 2:34. It actually appeared at 2:36. A 2-minute window. Exactly what you would expect if the driver pulled over at the end of the road. Checked the mirrors, removed a mask, confirmed the coast was clear, and drove away. Retired NYP. D Detective Pat Brosnan identified the vehicle as a Kia Soul. The sheriff confirmed to NBC that the timing matches the abduction and the car is under investigation. And here's the detail that should disturb everyone. That couple's house sits just outside the active 2-mile search radius. No investigators ever knocked on their door. They came forward themselves after seeing the news, checked their camera, found the footage, and voluntarily handed it over to investigators. Which raises a chilling question. How many other cameras within 2 to 5 miles caught something crucial that went unnoticed because the perimeter stopped half a mile too short? The question now is direction. Heading south leads to Interstate 19 and Rio Rico 60 miles from the Mexican border. Going west leads toward Tucson, Marana, where Evans lives. Some reports link Evans to a property in Rio Rico, right along that southern route. And the FBI confirmed they contacted Mexican authorities through their field office in Hermosillo, Sonora. The agency has the footage. They know which way he went. They are staying silent. Now, I want to show you a detail that changed in recent weeks. A connection almost no one is making right now. A former federal prosecutor named Tad DiBiase, one of the nation's leading experts on prosecuting no-body homicides, recently analyzed this very case. And he shared an insight that should worry anyone seeking justice. To him, the biggest mistake right now is the lack of a massive search. Not just for the chance of finding Nancy, which matters immensely, but for what happens inside the courtroom. DiBiase explained that without a thorough search, the defense can stand up and argue that Nancy simply walked away, got lost in the desert, or that something else happened, and the prosecution would have no way to disprove it. But if investigators search every dry creek bed, every trail, and every abandoned property within a 2-mile radius and find absolutely nothing, they can stand before the jury and say she did not walk away. We searched everywhere. The only explanation left is that someone took her. DiBiase called the absence of that search a serious vulnerability for the upcoming trial. He made another observation that really stuck with me. He said the challenge in a no-body case is twofold. First, you must prove the person is actually dead and not just missing. And second, you have to prove the man on trial is the killer. An exhaustive search is how you answer that first crucial question. By searching everywhere and finding nothing, you make it nearly impossible to argue Nancy is still alive somewhere, or that she ran off on her own. You shut down that defense long before the trial begins. And right now, according to DiBiase, those doors remain open. He also shared something that completely reframes this entire case. He has spent 20 years studying no-body homicides, and he says the classic pattern in over half of these cases involves people they knew, partners, friends, roommates, or business associates. The actual abduction of an adult by a stranger taken right from their home with no clear connection. That, according to him, is extremely rare. He could barely recall a single instance in his entire career. Which means statistically, the odds favor someone who actually knew Nancy, someone close to her, not a complete stranger who stumbled up a hill in the pitch black. And here is the worst part. A volunteer search group called the United Cajun Navy offered their help, repeatedly equipped with drone teams, canine units, thermal imaging, and expert allies at the Mexican border. They had a complete plan and said they could mobilize in 72 hours. The sheriff's office notified them in writing that outside help was refused. Drone teams stood ready to scan that harsh desert from above. Search dogs for dry creek beds, thermal imaging capable of detecting the subtle disruptions that human remains leave in the environment. An offer to search ground nobody has covered. They even pointed out that in half their missions, they find bodies they were not even looking for. Yet they were turned away. Why would an investigation desperately needing to find remains to bring peace to the family and build a solid case and reject free-trained, capable help? I do not have that answer, but it is a question that must be asked aloud repeatedly until we get one. The ransom demand also deserves a closer look under the lens of what we know today. They demanded $6 million in Bitcoin. Why 6? Not 5, not 10, not some round figure a stranger would pull out of thin air. 6 million is bizarrely precise. It is a number from someone who knows Savannah Guthrie's salary. Someone who understands the difference between her net worth and the actual cash she could quickly put her hands on. An outsider demands 50 million because they are dreaming big. An insider asks for 6 because they have spent 20 years hearing conversations around the same table. And that Bitcoin wallet has been dead quiet since day one. The FBI allegedly sent a tiny sum as a trap, zero activity. No one has touched it. If this was actually about the money, someone would have moved those funds by now. The silence from that wallet proves what the medication on the counter already suggested. This ransom was never meant to be collected. It was a smokescreen, a setup designed to point detectives toward a financial motive, while the real motive waited quietly 4 miles away. According to reports, one of the ransom notes mentioned a principal individual. Think about that word principal. You do not call yourself a principal individual unless others are operating under your command. That is hierarchical language. 2 words in a ransom note that may have quietly revealed the structure of the entire operation. Let's slow down, because amid all of this, the DNA, the gloves, the car, the theories, it is easy to lose sight of the person at the center. Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old, a mother of 3, and a deeply faithful woman who streamed her church services every single Sunday without fail. That small faithful routine was exactly what raised the very first red flags. Because the Sunday she did not show up, her friends waiting for her knew instantly that something was terribly wrong. She was not someone who would just miss an appointment. She lived completely independently. She took an Uber to her daughter's house the night she vanished because she valued doing things on her own terms. She was sharp, she was loved, and by all accounts incredibly sweet. She's the one missing not a case number but a grandmother. And for 124 days, her children have woken up every single morning to the exact same nightmare. This is where everything converges. 2 DNA profiles point directly to 2 men. Those 41 minutes suggest 2 men. Smashed taillights and a deactivated front camera reveal a coordinated 2-point entry. The confidence in how they moved on that porch betrays someone who knew the house. The untouched medication and the inactive Bitcoin wallet prove the ransom was fake. And the word principal in that note reveals more than one person was involved. The evidence keeps circling back to 2 people linked by 19 years of playing music together. One capable of providing info no outsider would have. Another whose background, build and description match the figure on the porch as the net tightens around the culprits. Specialized laboratories are already analyzing the rootless hair. 2 DNA profiles mean 2 family trees in the databases. 2 chances for a distant relative to pop up and ruin everything. Cell tower pings do not need anyone to confess. DNA does not need a backup. Every conspiracy has a breaking point. The moment one realizes the other would instantly sacrifice him to save himself. There is a $1 million cash reward, and anonymous tips are welcome. In a partnership of 2, the first to talk cuts a deal. The second carries all the weight. The bond uniting these 2 men, 19 years of shared stages and rehearsals, was built solely for the music. It was never built to survive this. That is the cold, hard truth. If this video helped shed some light on the case, hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because we will not abandon this case until Nancy is found. Tell me in the comments, after everything you just heard, was it 1 person or were there 2? I read every single comment. See you in the next video.